Yeah, the title of this video is not a clickbait. I really have never in my life watched a single Star Wars movie ever. Hello everyone, this is ICBs here and today I'm going to talk about Star Wars Episode 4. But before that, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I am 24 years old right now and I've never watched Star Wars. And you might be wondering why the hell not? Star Wars are too big to avoid, right? And I'm not going to lie, I do know some things about Star Wars, like Darth Vader being Luke's father and Obi-Wan Kenobi says, well, hello there. My other information about Star Wars comes from watching Family Guy specials, which gave me an overall idea of what the plot is about. But the thing is, I've never really got into Star Wars, and the reason for that is, it looks way too weird. When I was a kid, Cartoon Network at the time was airing Star Wars The Clone Wars episodes, and I tried watching them, just that I was, really lost watching them. I didn't know what the hell was happening half the time and never really got into the story. It just felt too complicated. I thought the lightsabers and the spaceships looked cool, but it felt like the series didn't really had a head or a tail for me, and by that I mean a beginning or an end, or at least I could never figure it out. Skip to my teen years when I would often find Star Wars movies on the television and I never really bothered to watch them for the same reason that I could not understand what the hell the story was about. And well, one more thing. It's this weird Chewbacca guy. I don't know, he looks weird and hairy and always making weird noises, and most of the time he looks cheap, like someone wearing a costume. It gave me the impression of some old cheap Godzilla movies. So that's most of the reasons why I never really got into Star Wars. I never liked it, but at the same time I knew that it must be really good because everyone loves it. It's a successful franchise, so obviously it had to be good. And I always wanted to watch the entire series, but I never got around to it until today. And I mean not today, because I watched it on 8th of September 2023, so I don't really know when I'll upload this video, but saying today sounds much better for the sake of this video. And now finally, let's talk about the movie. And don't get me wrong, this is not a review. Think of this as your first impressions of a normie who has never watched Star Wars before. So my first impression was surprised, I guess, because the first movie is called Episode 4, but then I remembered something about the prequels being a thing in the Star Wars, so I thought it might be okay. Now when I finally started watching the movie, I was greeted by this text that's slanted and going into space. It's not the first time I'm seeing this text. I mean, the Family Guy and the other parodies that I watched also use the same kind of text, but yeah, I guess it kind of looks a bit cheesy. But then again, I have to remember that this movie was released in 1977, so yeah, some things do feel a bit dated, but surprisingly most things about this movie still hold up. Now I was a bit worried that this movie was going to be lore heavy and just filled with a lot of exposition. Considering my experience with it in the past, I just used to think that it was a really complicated franchise with a lot of things happening, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that this movie feels fairly simple. It's a very simple hero's journey and it doesn't feel overwhelming with too many expositions. That is not to say that there wasn't any exposition, it's just that when it was given it feels natural part of the dialogue. For example, when Luke's uncle says that Obi-Wan Kenobi died along with his father and Luke mentioning the Clone Wars to Kenobi, it feels so natural, and there are plenty more examples of that. Another scene that I particularly liked was when Luke and his uncle buy R2-D2 and C-3PO. It's hard to explain why I like it. It's just I like it for its simplicity and the way it was executed. The casual dialogues and how the red R2-D2 unit gets busted and C-3PO tells Luke to buy the blue R2-D2. You might think that it's weird that I'm mentioning this seemingly insignificant scene, but I do love how these characters talk and interact with one another. It's so casual, as if it's all really happening and someone just recorded it. Compare that with modern movies and you never really get this level of casual dialogue dialogues. Everything feels so staged and fake in the new movies. Again, I don't know what it is, maybe it's the simplicity or maybe the casual nature of this movie, but I like it. So yeah, that's mostly it for the story. I liked it. It was my first introduction to Star Wars and it was a pretty damn good one. Also because this movie was made in 1977, so one might expect the CGI to be absolutely dated. But honestly, it's kind of possible. You obviously notice the computer generated nature of some of the creatures, but I don't think it's that bad. One thing that I didn't like though were the practical effects, particularly the ships and the Death Star. Now I assume they were using miniatures for these parts of the movies, but the thing is, that's exactly what they feel like. They feel like miniatures and not giant colossal ships or the Death Star. I think they could have used some camera trick to pull it off, but yeah, I don't think it works that well. I don't feel the giant colossal machines, but I guess it's just a product of its time. And speaking of a product of its time, I want to talk about C-3PO. The way his mouth doesn't even move when he talks and his movements and just the way he's made. He doesn't look futuristic enough. I think we have better looking robots right now than C-3PO. I definitely think that his design was a product of limitations at the time, which makes me wonder what his design choice would be if this movie was made in modern times. I think they might have used a lot of slick elements on him to make him look more futuristic. Now, one of the things that I was kind of disappointed by was, well, Darth Vader. I mean, he's considered to be the best villain in the history of cinema, or so I'm told. And I was definitely expecting him to be way more intimidating, like he would have a very deep and scary voice, but instead he has a very normal voice. He almost sounds like someone who is working in an office, just the way he talks so professionally and gives orders. I don't know, maybe I had a straw man built in my head, but who knows, maybe that will change in the future movies. Maybe Vader will become more intimidating, I don't know. I guess I'll just watch the rest of the movies to see. Another thing that I didn't like was the fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. I mean, they look like an old man and a guy in an uncomfortable suit doing a sword fight, which is exactly what it is. There was no swiftness or a lot of action there. Another thing that I found a bit weird was that Luke was more sad about Obi-Wan's death rather than his aunt and uncles, who I assume he had spent a majority of his life with. But no, I guess he's more sad about a weird space wizard that he met for a couple of days. But yeah, I guess this is my impressions after watching the Star Wars for the first time in my life. It's definitely a good movie and I'll be sure to watch the rest of the movies so I'm not a normie NPC anymore. But let me know what you guys think about this movie. When was the first time you watched it? With that said, this is it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, it's time for a goodbye.